It's an honor to be here and an honor to meet all of you, and I'm so happy that you decided to come to this, because to me this is one of the most important things that any of us as world citizens can be doing. And that's bringing about the creation of a structure of global governance, one that is democratized, one that is empowered to get the job done for us, to save our lives, to save humanity from disaster. I really do believe, I've studied and worked on it, as Rob said, for many years, since 1992 at least, and I really do believe from what I've seen, most of you probably read is what I read, Al Gore, if we have one of those tipping points, which we're supposed to have in 1015 or 1016, there's no telling what will happen to our society, to humankind. And I believe that humankind is in danger. But with all the problems we got, whether we talk about war and peace, whether we talk about extreme poverty, whether we talk about abuse of human rights, but whatever we talk about in terms of the global social problems and global problems we have, I think we're going to be doomed if we don't learn to govern ourselves like we should. I think if you were somebody from Mars, some planet in some other galaxy that came down and saw the human beings spending $1.7 trillion a year killing each other, pouring arms and more down the black hole and killing each other, does that make sense? Does anybody here think that makes sense? I don't think so. I don't think so. And you would have 25,000 little children. I happen to have 8 children. I love children. I got 7 grandchildren. And I think about every day I get up, the day before, 25,000 children died that day from malnutrition, hunger, and because they could not be protected from treatable diseases. We have go on and on. We have 2 billion people on this planet, almost a third. We have about 6.4, 6.5 billion people. Almost a third live on less than $2 a day. And we say, the Bible says the poor will be with you always. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. We know as people, intelligent people, if we wanted to do something about poverty, we could get rid of poverty within about 50 years if we put our minds to it, spend the money like we should. It could be done. We create what I call in this book, and I'll talk to you about that in a minute, the Bill of Social Rights. The Bill of Social Rights is simple. It just says that every human being on this planet is entitled to food on the table, clothes on their back, shelter over their heads, medical care, adequate medical care, an education up to through the college, paid for by the state, or whatever, if they have that right to that education, and then a job commensurate with their training ability to work. Everybody have a job so they can contribute to society, except for those who can, the elderly, the kind of like myself, and the too young, and the people who are sick and cannot work for themselves. They would have Social Security. But those are the 7 parts of the Bill of Social Rights that every person on earth can have if we want to do it. But we've got to stop spending $1.7 trillion a year going down that black hole of war, arms, and killing each other. We've got to stop it. There's a lot of literature lately about that, and I hope all of you will read that, think about it. We discuss it in this book I'm going to talk to you about in just a minute. But we've got to start spending money on things that count, that are constructive, that are positive instead of negative and destructive. If we don't, we are doomed. Now, I'm supposed to talk about what kind of UN do we like to see once we do amend the charter, once we do call an Article 109 conference, which I think my good friend Francisco spoke about, and we do get to say we're successful in getting the charter established. We need to talk about at some point in time what kind of charter do we want. And I'm sure we're going to have a lot of disagreement on that. Even all of us who are together on agreeing that we need a structured global governance that is democratized and empowered, I don't think any one of us here today would agree with anyone else exactly what that government should be. And so that's the thing we've got to start thinking about. What I've done, I've spent a lot of time doing it, prepared this book. It's a proposed new UN charter. It's an outline of it, not in formal wording that you would adopt a charter with, and it discusses all the problems we have. And the problems are fairly obvious. The first problem is what one person told us when Bob and I went to one of the meetings here the day before yesterday, and that was the question of, well, are you opening Pandora's box? Are you going to come out with worse than what you started out with? And listen, as somebody who's dedicated and believes that we've got to have this structure of global governance, I admit that that is a real serious matter we've got to consider. How do we make sure that, for example, Dwight D. Eisenhower, our great general and president, my father didn't vote for him, I was too young to vote, but anyway, he did say something that really stands out. We all remember, you know what it is. You beware of the military-industrial complex. Well, if we have a charter review conference, will the military-industrial complex take it over and get what they want? More arms. Don't think they're not going to try. I'm a trial lawyer. I make my living suing corporations all over the world. I specialize in international law. I see it happen in all these cases where these multinational corporations, for example, in one case I have involving banana workers in Central America, Dow Chemical Company was making this chemical called DVCP. And the DVCP was used to spray on the plants, but it caused injury to the people who used it. Serious injuries such as sterility, and damage to the kidneys, and cancer. And so we are suing this. And I'm telling you, they're fighting us like hell. I mean, they are fighting. But what just really disturbed me about that whole situation is that chemical was banned in the United States in the late 1970s. And then, late 1960s. And then all during the 70s and early 80s, they took the same chemical that was banned in the United States and dumped it on Central America. That's the Dow Chemical Company and Dole Food Company. And they did that, and we're suing them because they did do that. Now, that's not right. But that happens because we have corporate anarchy. There's no real control over corporations when they become multinational corporations, except in their own country or in the country they have to comply with laws where they do business. But still, there's nothing to keep control over many of the abuses that occur. But getting down to what's in the charter, I don't have a couple of three of these that I brought with me. Here's it. It looks like this. And I've got a list here. And if any of you are interested, if you'll come up and sign the list after we're through and put your emails down, we will email you a copy of it if you want us to. It's kind of heavy reading, I'll admit, but it goes into all the various problems that we have, the suggestions of how we get around those problems. One of the problems, of course, is the tyranny of the majority. That's always a problem. The Greeks first told us about that way back when. And that is a problem that we're going to have to face, and that if you go to the United States and talk to Americans, they're going to say, wait a minute, I'm not going to let the majority of those people over there in the developing world tell me what I've got to do. I'm not going to do it. And so we've got to develop checks and balances. And we've suggested some very creative ways to do that. I don't have time to go into it now, it's too complicated. And I want to say this book, this suggestion of ours, is not we're not trying to tell people this is what we've got to do. Not at all. This is something for you to read and have a starting point for dialogue. We need dialogue in the world about what kind of global governance we want to have. And this is a good starting point for dialogue, I believe. So read it over. You and I promise you, there's not anybody in this room that would agree with everything I say in this book. And I wouldn't expect you to. Nor to if it were turned about. I would not agree with what you say, probably, completely. But I think we can get some common ground and start working on getting a structure of global governance, one that is democratized and empowered. I'm going to stop.
Stop soon.
Okay, I'm going to say one thing that's about the subject matter of this conference, which is trying to establish, well, we've got to do it, and I've said this, and it's in the book, we talk about it, but universal disarmament. We don't do that. Then we keep spending the $1.7 or $1.5 trillion a year, and we can't get anything constructive done. But we've got to learn to deal with the environment, take care of the poverty, and all these other things. But I've got in here a plan of how to control. There's another place where we have to be aware of the tyranny of those who are running the armed forces of the United Nations. The United Nations will have to have a standing force. There's no question about that. I don't think anybody here would disagree with that. But the question is, how do we do that? And how do we make sure there's not going to be some group that will try to take it over and engage in some pure tyranny? So what we do, we